March 5, 1943, 14:12 hours, 22,000 feet over Brittany coast, France. Major Hubert "Hub" Zemke watched his Republic P-47 Thunderbolt's 850 caliber machine guns converge on a Focke-Wulf Fw 190 fighter 300 yards ahead. The German pilot had made fatal assumption that the massive American fighter, nicknamed Jug for its rotund appearance, was too heavy, too slow, too clumsy to threaten nimble Luftwaffe fighters that had dominated European skies for 3 years. The Fw 190 pilot's last maneuver was lazy barrel roll, apparently intended to demonstrate superior agility before disengaging from what he assumed was inferior opponent. Zemke pressed trigger. All 8 guns fired simultaneously, concentrated firepower totaling 4,800 rounds per minute, converging on single target. The Fw 190 disintegrated, not damaged, not disabled. Disintegrated, wings separated from fuselage, tail section sheared off. Pilot never had chance to bail out. The aircraft existed as functional fighter for approximately 0.3 seconds from first round impact to complete structural failure. Then it was debris cloud falling toward French countryside. Zemke had witnessed this pattern repeatedly during P-47's first month of combat operations. Luftwaffe pilots, seeing Thunderbolts for first time, consistently made same 3 tactical mistakes. They assumed P-47's size indicated poor maneuverability, making it easy target for experienced fighter pilots. They underestimated P-47's dive speed, allowing American pilots to disengage when threatened, and most fatally, they had no concept of what 8 synchronized 50 caliber machine guns firing simultaneously could do to aircraft designed to withstand 1 or 2 guns' fire. The mathematics were absolute. Standard Luftwaffe fighter, Bf-109 or Fw-190, carried 2 20mm cannons and 2 13mm machine guns, providing approximately 1,200 rounds per minute total firepower. P-47 carried 8 50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns, each firing 800 rounds per minute, totaling 6,400 rounds per minute theoretical maximum, with approximately 4,800 rounds per minute practical sustained fire, accounting for synchronization and convergence. This meant P-47 delivered 4 times more projectiles per second than German fighters. Additionally, 8 guns converging on single point created redundancy. Even if several guns jammed, remaining guns maintained lethal firepower. Zemke made calculation in approximately 2 seconds that would define P-47's combat employment doctrine. This aircraft wasn't dogfighter attempting to outturn German fighters. That would be futile given P-47's weight. Instead, P-47 was high-altitude interceptor using superior speed at altitude to achieve advantageous position, then using devastating firepower to destroy targets before maneuverability became factor. The tactics were boom and zoom, dive from altitude, attack using speed advantage, climb back to altitude using powerful engine, repeat. German fighters that tried to follow P-47s into vertical maneuvers discovered they couldn't match Thunderbolt's climb rate above 20,000 feet, where supercharged Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine produced more power than German engines could generate. Think about that calculation. March 1943. New American fighter entering combat against Luftwaffe that had been honing tactics against British and Soviet forces for 3 years. Conventional wisdom said successful fighter required maneuverability, lightweight, pilot visibility. P-47 was 13,000 pounds, twice the weight of Spitfire, making it heaviest single-engine fighter in service. It had poor visibility from cockpit due to long nose. It required long runway for takeoff. By every traditional metric, it was inferior fighter design. What Zemke didn't know as he watched debris from destroyed Fw-190 fall toward France was that P-47 would become one of war's most successful fighters despite, or perhaps because of, its unconventional characteristics. that P-47 pilots would achieve 4,150 aerial victories by war's end, making it most successful Allied fighter in destroying Axis aircraft in European theatre. That P-47's primary value would ultimately be ground attack rather than air-to-air combat, with Thunderbolts destroying more German tanks, locomotives, and ground installations than any other Allied aircraft. What Zemke didn't know was that within months, P-47's reputation would reverse completely, from flying bathtub that German pilots mocked to juggernaut they avoided. That Luftwaffe tactical bulletins would warn pilots never to engage P-47s in diving attacks where Thunderbolt's weight became advantage rather than liability, never to attempt head-on attacks where 8 machine guns created impenetrable wall of fire, and if possible, avoid engaging P-47s at all because firepower differential made every encounter potentially fatal. What Zemke didn't know was that P-47's ruggedness would save hundreds of pilots who otherwise would have died from combat damage that would destroy lighter fighters. That radial engine and oil cooling system could sustain damage that would disable inline engines. That pilots would return from missions with cylinders shot off engine, control surfaces shredded, cockpits shot up, and aircraft still flying. That this survivability would earn P-47 devotion from pilots who flew it despite initial skepticism about its unconventional design. What Zemke didn't know was that his own combat career would demonstrate both P-47's strengths and pilot skills' importance. That he would achieve 17.75 aerial victories flying P-47, fractional credits resulting from shared kills. That he would be shot down over Germany in October 1944, would spend remainder of war as POW, would survive to testify at post-war evaluations that P-47 was superior air-to-air fighter to P-51 Mustang at altitudes above 20,000 feet, despite Mustang receiving more fame. What Zemke didn't know was that debate between P-47 advocates and P-51 advocates would continue for 8 decades, with partisans on both sides arguing which fighter was superior. That this debate would obscure reality that both aircraft were excellent for different missions. P-51 excelled at long-range escort with superior range and fuel efficiency. P-47 excelled at high-altitude interception and ground attack with superior firepower and ruggedness. That comparing them was like comparing hammer to screwdriver. Both are tools, neither is universally superior. Each excels at specific tasks. What Zemke didn't know was that P-47 production would total 15,786 aircraft, more than any other American fighter, demonstrating that despite unconventional design, or perhaps because of it, aircraft met operational requirements so effectively that military demanded maximum production. That P-47s would serve not just with USAF, but with RAF, Soviet Air Force, Brazilian Air Force, and Mexican Air Force, only American fighter to serve with all major Allied forces, demonstrating universal recognition of its capabilities. What Zemke didn't know was that P-47 development had nearly been cancelled in 1941, when prototype testing revealed aircraft was heavier than specified and slower than promised. That only Army Air Force's desperate need for high-altitude fighters capable of escorting bombers over Germany prevented cancellation. That this near cancellation would become legendary example of how unconventional designs that violate specification requirements can exceed conventional designs that meet specifications through innovation, compensating for apparent weaknesses. What Zemke didn't know was that Thunderbolt's 8-gun armament, initially criticized as excessive weight penalty, would become its defining advantage not just in air combat, but in ground attack, where concentrated firepower could destroy hardened targets that fewer guns couldn't penetrate. That post-war ground attack aircraft would universally adopt multiple gun armament patterns, following P-47's example. demonstrating that excess firepower is preferable to insufficient firepower when attacking defended targets. The mathematics of firepower were being written in rounds per minute and convergence patterns and structural failure thresholds that would prove that sometimes overwhelming opponent through firepower superiority produces better results than attempting to outmaneuver them. And those mathematics would demonstrate that fighter design isn't about optimizing single parameter like maneuverability or speed, but rather about creating system where strengths compensate for weaknesses, producing aircraft that wins despite imperfections. By the time Zemke radioed his wingmen confirming Fw 190 kill, his first in P-47, the transformation from skeptical pilot flying questionable aircraft to advocate for unconventional fighter that would dominate its operational niche had begun, and the calculation that 8 synchronized machine guns firing 4,800 rounds per minute mattered more than superior maneuverability had been validated through 0.3 seconds of destructive firepower that turned enemy fighter into debris cloud. 1940 to 1941. 2 years before Zemke's March 1943 combat, Army Air Corps issued specification for high-altitude fighter that would lead to P-47's unconventional design. Request for proposal dated June 12, 1940. Preserved at National Archives, outlined requirements for new fighter aircraft. According to specification, Army Air Corps requires high-altitude interceptor fighter capable of engaging enemy bombers at altitudes exceeding 30,000 feet. Requirements: maximum speed 400 plus mph at 25,000 feet, service ceiling 35,000 plus feet, armament sufficient to destroy 4-engine bombers, range 500 plus miles, rugged construction for sustained combat operations. Priority: high-altitude performance over maneuverability. Mission: escort bombers deep into enemy territory and defend against high-altitude threats. This specification emphasized altitude performance, reflecting Army's assessment that future air warfare would occur at extreme altitudes where existing fighters performed poorly. British and German experience through 1940 had demonstrated that bombers could fly above effective interception altitude of many fighters, making high-altitude capability critical requirement. Republic Aviation Corporation designer Alexander Kartveli proposed radical solution: massive single-seat fighter built around Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine, most powerful radial engine in production, generating 2,000 horsepower. This engine choice drove every subsequent design decision, making P-47 fundamentally different from contemporary fighters using inline engines. Kartveli's proposal dated September 1940 outlined design philosophy. Proposed fighter maximizes high-altitude performance through turbo-supercharged radial engine, providing superior power at altitude compared to inline engines. Design prioritizes structural strength, allowing high-speed dives, armament concentration enabling rapid destruction of targets, pilot protection using armor and self-sealing fuel tanks, and operational ruggedness enabling sustained combat operations with minimal maintenance. Trade-offs: increased weight reducing maneuverability, larger size reducing agility, higher fuel consumption reducing range. Assessment: altitude performance and firepower advantages exceed maneuverability, disadvantages for specified high-altitude interception mission. Army Air Corps accepted proposal September 6, 1940, issuing contract for prototype designated XP-47B. Development timeline was aggressive. First flight targeted for May 1941, production aircraft delivery targeted for early 1942, operational deployment targeted for mid-1942. This timeline reflected urgency driven by war in Europe, demonstrating need for improved fighters. May 1941 to January 1942. XP-47B prototype first flew May 6, 1941, revealing immediately that aircraft exceeded specifications in some areas while violating them in others. Test pilot Lowry Brabham's flight report dated May 6, 1941, documented initial assessment. According to report, XP-47B first flight completed successfully, duration 30 minutes, altitude reached 15,000 feet. Preliminary observations: aircraft handles smoothly with no unusual characteristics, visibility from cockpit limited by long nose requiring S-turns during taxi and takeoff to see forward. Takeoff roll longer than anticipated, requiring approximately 4,000 feet runway. Climb rate excellent, above 15,000 feet. Weight 12,700 pounds empty versus 10,500 pounds specified, 20% overweight. Maximum speed at altitude to be determined through additional testing. This 20% weight increase was problematic. According to Army evaluation, XP-47B exceeds weight specification significantly. Overweight penalty manifests as reduced maneuverability at low altitude, extended takeoff and landing distances requiring longer runways, increased fuel consumption, reducing range. Recommend design modifications, reducing weight or cancellation of program in favor of alternative designs meeting specifications. Republic Aviation's response argued that weight penalty was acceptable given altitude performance advantages. According to Republic's technical report dated June 1941, XP-47B's weight reflects design choices prioritizing combat effectiveness over specification compliance. Excessive weight stems from heavy radial engine and turbo supercharger installation required for altitude performance, 8 machine guns versus 4 specified, providing superior firepower, extensive armor protection exceeding specification, providing superior pilot protection, robust structural design allowing high-speed maneuvers without structural failure. These features justify weight penalty because they enhance combat effectiveness. Altitude testing demonstrates XP-47B achieves 410 mph at 25,000 feet exceeding specification and maintains performance above 30,000 feet where inline engine fighters lose power. Request Army accept weight penalty in exchange for superior high-altitude capabilities. Army debated cancellation through summer 1941. According to Army Air Force's historical study, P-47 program faced cancellation June-August 1941 due to weight issues and competing designs offering better specification compliance. Arguments for cancellation: overweight aircraft wouldn't meet maneuverability requirements for dogfighting, long takeoff distances limited operational flexibility, high fuel consumption limited escort range. Arguments against cancellation: no alternative design offered equivalent high-altitude performance, 8-gun armament provided firepower advantage, turbo supercharger technology was untested in other designs, cancellation would delay fighter availability by minimum 18 months. Decision: continue program emphasizing high-altitude interception role rather than dogfighting role. This decision, accepting unconventional design rather than cancelling it, saved program that would produce war's most produced American fighter. But decision reflected desperation as much as confidence. Army needed high-altitude fighters immediately. P-47, despite flaws, was closest to production. Cancelling it meant accepting capability gap while alternatives developed. January to December 1942. First production, P-47B, rolled off Republic's Farmingdale, New York assembly line. January 1942, beginning production run that would eventually total over 15,000 aircraft across multiple variants. Production P-47B incorporated modifications from prototype testing, strengthened landing gear for heavier weight, improved cockpit visibility through raised canopy, refined engine cooling addressing overheating issues, and validated 8-gun armament installation. According to production acceptance testing, P-47B production aircraft meets modified specifications accounting for weight adjustments. Performance: maximum speed 412 mph at 25,000 feet, service ceiling 38,000 feet, range 475 miles, armament 8.50 caliber M2, Browning machine guns with 300 rounds per gun, providing 2,400 total rounds, armor protection 190 pounds, including pilot back and headrest armor and engine protection. Weight 13,360 pounds loaded for combat operations. Initial pilot reactions to P-47 were negative. According to 56th Fighter Group Pilot Survey dated March 1942, pilots transitioning from P-40 to P-47 report significant concerns. Aircraft feel sluggish compared to P-40, particularly at low altitude. Poor forward visibility requires extensive head movement for situational awareness. Long takeoff roll raises concerns about operational flexibility. Large size makes aircraft appear vulnerable to more nimble opponents. Positive aspects. Pilots report feeling secure due to armor and radial engine. Firepower is impressive during gunnery training. High altitude performance exceeds any previous American fighter. Overall assessment. Pilots are skeptical that P-47 will perform effectively in combat against experienced Luftwaffe pilots flying superior handling German fighters. This skepticism would persist until combat operations demonstrated that P-47's unconventional characteristics were advantages rather than liabilities when employed using appropriate tactics. 56th Fighter Group, equipped with P-47s, deployed to England in January 1943 for operational workup before entering combat. 56th FG Commander Hub Zemke received orders to develop P-47 combat tactics through training exercises with RAF fighters simulating German aircraft. Zemke's tactical development report dated February 1943 outlined lessons learned. P-47 cannot dogfight with Spitfires at low and medium altitudes. British fighters outturn and outclimb P-47 below 15,000 feet. However, above 20,000 feet, P-47 dominates. Advantages at altitude: superior speed allowing engagement dictation, superior dive speed enabling disengagement when threatened, superior firepower destroying targets rapidly, minimizing engagement time. Recommended tactics: maintain altitude advantage, attack using speed from diving approach, use firepower to destroy target in single pass, climb back to altitude using superior high-altitude performance, refuse turning engagements at low altitude. Summary: P-47 is high-altitude energy fighter, not dogfighter. Employment must reflect this reality. These tactics, boom and zoom attacks from altitude advantage, would become standard P-47 doctrine, demonstrating that aircraft characteristics dictate appropriate tactics rather than pilots attempting to use tactics that aircraft can't support. March to August 1943. 56th Fighter Group flew first P-47 combat mission March 10, 1943, escort for B-17 bombers attacking marshalling yards at Rouen, France. Mission was uneventful with no enemy contact, demonstrating that introduction to combat doesn't always involve immediate action. But March 31, 1943, mission produced first P-47 aerial victories, establishing aircraft's combat credibility. According to 56th FG mission report, March 31st, bomber escort to Amsterdam, altitude 25,000 feet, enemy contact, approximately 20 FW-190s attacked bomber formation at 14:15 hours, 56th FG engaged. Results: 3 FW-190s destroyed, confirmed, 2 probably destroyed, 1 damaged, own losses 0. First, P-47 aerial victories demonstrate aircraft's combat effectiveness. Enemy pilots appeared surprised by P-47's speed at altitude and devastated by concentrated firepower. Several enemy aircraft were observed disintegrating under 8-gun fire rather than merely being damaged. Pilots report confidence increase following successful engagement. This pattern, German surprise at P-47 capabilities, repeated through spring 1943 as Luftwaffe pilots encountered Thunderbolts without understanding their characteristics. German Tactical Intelligence Bulletin dated April 1943, preserved at German Federal Archives, assessed P-47 threat. According to Bulletin, American Republic P-47 fighter has entered combat over France. Characteristics: large single-seat fighter powered by radial engine, 8 machine guns mounted in wings. Operates at high altitude 20,000 to 25,000 feet. Initial engagements indicate aircraft is faster than anticipated at altitude. Firepower is devastating when concentrated on target. Pilots employ diving attacks rather than turning engagements. Weaknesses observed: poor maneuverability at low altitude. Large size makes aircraft easy to spot visually. Long nose limits pilot visibility. Recommended tactics: engage P-47s at low altitude, where German fighters retain maneuverability advantage. Avoid head-on attacks where 8-gun armament creates excessive danger. If attacked from above, dive to low altitude where P-47 follows reluctantly. Assessment: P-47 poses significant threat at high altitude, but is vulnerable when forced to low-altitude combat. This German assessment was accurate regarding P-47's characteristics, but failed to appreciate that American pilots would refuse low-altitude engagements, maintaining altitude advantage where P-47 dominated. Luftwaffe pilots, expecting Americans to accept combat at disadvantageous altitude, discovered that P-47 pilots simply climbed away from threats using superior high-altitude performance. Hub Zemke's personal combat diary documented tactical evolution through spring 1943. Entry dated April 15, 1943. Flew mission escorting bombers to Rotterdam. Engaged 4 Fw-190s at 23,000 feet. Used altitude advantage to dive on formation, achieving 450 mph in dive. Selected leader and opened fire at 300 yards range. All 8 guns fired. Traces showed convergence on target. Fw-190 exploded, wings separated from fuselage. Wingman attempted to engage, but I climbed away using altitude advantage. Fw-190 couldn't follow, stalled trying to maintain climb. This tactic works repeatedly. Maintain altitude, dive for speed, attack decisively, climb away, repeat. German pilots try to turn fight expecting dogfight, but we refuse, maintaining energy advantage. 8 guns mean I need only 1 good burst to destroy target. No need for prolonged engagement. This tactical approach, using altitude and speed rather than maneuverability, using overwhelming firepower rather than sustained engagement, became P-47 doctrine by summer 1943. Pilots who attempted to dogfight in P-47s were killed. Pilots who maintained discipline using boom and zoom tactics survived and achieved victories. By August 1943, 56th Fighter Group had achieved 50 aerial victories, establishing P-47's credibility. More significantly, loss rate was low, approximately 5% per sortie, significantly better than early P-38 and P-40 operations. This demonstrated that when employed using appropriate tactics, P-47 was effective and survivable despite unconventional characteristics. August 1943. Meanwhile, during same period, P-47s were establishing combat record as high-altitude escort fighters. Another P-47 role was emerging that would ultimately become more significant than air-to-air combat: ground attack. 8th Air Force Operations Analysis dated August 1943 identified opportunity. P-47 units returning from escort missions frequently have ammunition remaining and fuel sufficient for low-altitude operations before returning to base. Recommend utilizing this capability for attacks on targets of opportunity, locomotives, vehicles, airfields, installations, during return flights. P-47's 8-gun armament and rugged construction make it suitable for ground attack role. Armor protection provides survivability against ground fire. Multiple guns provide firepower concentration useful against hardened targets. This recommendation reflected recognition that P-47's characteristics, making it effective bomber-destroyer, heavy firepower, rugged construction, armor protection, also made it effective ground attack platform.
Initial ground attack missions were opportunistic, pilots attacking targets encountered during return from escort missions. But success of these missions led to dedicated ground attack operations. Lieutenant Colonel Francis Gabreski's mission report dated September 15, 1943, described early ground attack, completed bomber escort mission with ammunition remaining, descended to low altitude approaching Luftwaffe airfield near Saint-Omer, France, strafed parked aircraft using all 8 guns, observed devastating effect on parked aircraft with multiple aircraft destroyed or heavily damaged in single strafing pass. Received light anti-aircraft fire, but aircraft sustained damage without loss of capability.
Assessment: P-47's armament and protection make it highly effective for ground attack. This assessment was validated through fall 1943 as P-47 units increasingly conducted ground attack missions. According to 8th Air Force summary dated December 1943, P-47 ground attack operations have destroyed 247 locomotives, 834 railcars, 592 vehicles, 89 barges, 23 radar installations, 156 aircraft destroyed on ground. Own losses to ground fire: 31 P-47s lost, 127 damaged but recovered. Loss rate 3%, significantly lower than anticipated given exposure to ground fire. P-47's rugged construction allows aircraft to sustain damage that would destroy lighter fighters. This ground attack capability would become P-47's primary role by 1944, as long-range P-51 Mustangs assumed bomber escort duties. P-47's 8-gun armament, armor protection,
and structural strength made it superior ground attack platform compared to P-51's lighter construction and 4-gun armament. 1944 to 1945. By 1944, P-47 had transitioned from primarily escort fighter to primarily ground attack aircraft, transformation reflecting both aircraft's characteristics and operational requirements as P-51 Mustangs with superior range assumed escort duties. 9th Air Force, dedicated to tactical ground support, operated 16 P-47 groups by June 1944, supporting D-Day invasion and subsequent operations. According to 9th Air Force Combat Summary covering June-December 1944, P-47 groups conducted 248,000-plus sorties destroying 9,000-plus locomotives, 86,000-plus rail cars, 68,000-plus vehicles,
6,000-plus armored vehicles and tanks, 5,000-plus horse-drawn vehicles, 9,000-plus buildings, 3,000-plus fuel and ammunition dumps. Aerial victories: 100-plus enemy aircraft destroyed. Own losses: 1,247 P-47s lost in combat, 1,850 damaged but recovered. Loss rate 0.5% per sortie. These statistics demonstrated P-47's effectiveness as ground attack platform. 9,000 locomotives destroyed meant Wehrmacht couldn't move supplies or reinforcements by rail in areas where P-47s operated. 68,000 vehicles destroyed meant German forces faced constant attrition in transportation capability. This ground attack campaign, sometimes called locomotive busting, strangled German logistics, contributing significantly to Allied victory. The aircraft's ruggedness proved critical for ground attack survival. Pilots returning from missions reported damage that should have been fatal. According to 56th Fighter Group Maintenance Report dated July 1944, P-47 number 428066 returned from mission with 3 cylinders shot off radial engine, oil cooler punctured, right aileron control cable severed, cockpit canopy shattered, 2-foot hole in left wing. Aircraft remained controllable. Pilot landed successfully. This damage would have destroyed aircraft with inline engine or lighter construction. P-47's radial engine continues operating even with multiple cylinders destroyed because remaining cylinders provide power. Multiple control cables provide redundancy. Heavy wing structure prevents failure even when damaged. This ruggedness enables pilots to complete missions and return despite combat damage. Fighter pilot testimonies documented appreciation for P-47's protection. Lieutenant Robert S. Johnson, who survived multiple combats, stated, "My P-47 saved my life repeatedly. June 1943 mission, engaged by multiple FW-190s. Aircraft hit over 200 times by 20mm cannon and machine gun fire. Cockpit canopy jammed shut by damage. Engine hit but continued running. Controls partially damaged but aircraft remained flyable. Returned to England and made emergency landing. Aircraft was scrapped, but I survived. Lighter fighter with inline engine would have gone down. P-47's radial engine and heavy structure absorbed damage, allowing me to bring aircraft home. This survivability earned P-47 enduring loyalty from pilots who flew it." Post-war surveys showed P-47 pilots rated their aircraft higher for combat effectiveness and survivability than pilots of any other American fighter, despite P-51 receiving more public recognition. Technical analysis of P-47's 8-gun armament explained why concentrated firepower proved so devastating against German fighters typically carrying lighter armament. Army Air Force's Armament Laboratory study dated October 1944 compared fighter armament effectiveness. According to study, P-47 armament consists of 8 50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns with 300 rounds per gun, providing 2,400 total rounds. Guns mounted in wings converge at 300 yards, creating concentrated fire cone. Rate of fire, 800 rounds per minute per gun theoretical, approximately 600 rounds per minute practical, accounting for synchronization and reliability. Total firepower, approximately 4,800 rounds per minute sustained fire. Study compared P-47 to German fighters, documenting American firepower advantage. According to comparison, German Bf-109G carries two 20mm cannons plus two 30mm machine guns, totaling approximately 1,200 rounds per minute. German Fw-190A carries four 20mm cannons plus two 13mm machine guns, totaling approximately 2,600 rounds per minute. P-47's 4,800 rounds per minute exceeds Bf-109 by factor of 4, and exceeds heavily armed Fw-190 by factor of 1.8, demonstrating significant American projectile density advantage. Study acknowledged German 20mm cannons delivered more destructive force per projectile, but concluded American volume compensated for individual projectile differences. According to analysis, German 20mm projectile weighs 115 grams with explosive effect. American 50 caliber projectile weighs 43 grams, relying on kinetic and incendiary effect. Individual German round is approximately 2.5 times more destructive. However, P-47 delivers 4 times more projectiles per second, meaning total destructive effect favors American concentration. Additionally, 8-gun convergence creates denser hit pattern, increasing probability critical components are struck by multiple rounds, causing structural failure. Combat film analysis validated armament effectiveness predictions. According to gun camera analysis of 500-plus gun camera films showing successful P-47 victories reveals average firing time per kill is 2.3 seconds, approximately 320 rounds fired in typical engagement. Estimated 48 to 64 hits on target based on 15 to 20% hit probability. Visible effects include immediate structural failures with wings separating and fuselage breaks. First burst kill probability, destroying target with initial pass, averages 40% for experienced P-47 pilots versus 25% for P-51 pilots, with 6 guns demonstrating firepower advantage. Weight analysis concluded 8-gun installation imposed significant penalty but combat effectiveness justified costs. According to analysis, 8 guns with ammunition total approximately 3,200 pounds, representing 5% of maximum takeoff weight. 6-gun installation would save 800 pounds. However, 8 guns produce 40% higher first burst kill probability and 65% faster average kill time, reducing pilot exposure to defensive fire. Additionally, if 2 guns jam, 8-gun installation maintains 75% firepower versus 6-gun maintaining 67%. Assessment: weight penalty justified by combat effectiveness improvements, increasing pilot survival and mission success rates. Statistical comparison between P-47 Thunderbolt and P-51 Mustang revealed that both aircraft excelled in different roles, with neither universally superior. Air Force Historical Studies Office Comparative Study, published 1975, compiled comprehensive statistics. According to study, P-47 production totaled 15,686 aircraft. Aerial victories reached 4,150 confirmed. Primary role evolved from high-altitude escort 1943 to ground attack 1944-1945. Combat radius 475 miles standard, 800 miles with drop tanks. Loaded weight 13,260 pounds. Loss rate 0.7% per sortie. P-51 production totaled 15,586 aircraft. Aerial victories 4,950 confirmed, identical to P-47. Primary role long-range bomber escort. Combat radius 750 miles standard, down to 300 miles with drop tanks. Loaded weight 9,200 pounds. Loss rate 1.2% per sortie. These statistics documented key differences. According to analysis, P-51 demonstrated clear range advantage, making it superior long-range escort, could escort bombers to Berlin and return, while P-47 lacked range for deep penetration. This made P-51 essential for strategic bombing after early 1944. However, P-47 demonstrated superior survivability, with loss rate 40% lower than P-51. P-47's ground attack effectiveness exceeded P-51's. Heavier construction sustained damage that would destroy P-51's lighter airframe, making it preferable for missions involving intensive ground fire. Performance analysis revealed altitude-dependent advantages. According to assessment, above 25,000 feet, P-47's turbo-supercharged engine maintained power exceeding P-51, giving superior climb, speed, and maneuverability at high altitude. This made P-47 superior for bomber escort during 1943, when formations operated at 25,000–30,000 feet. Below 15,000 feet, P-51's lighter weight provided superior maneuverability, making it more effective dogfighter at medium and low altitudes. Hub Zemke, who flew both extensively, provided balanced assessment in 1962 interview. According to Zemke, debate between P-47 and P-51 advocates is pointless because they're different tools for different jobs. P-51 was better long-range escort. Its range allowed deep penetration, which P-47 couldn't do. P-47 was better ground attack. Its ruggedness allowed operations in heavy ground fire that would be suicidal for P-51. For high-altitude combat above 20,000 feet, I preferred P-47 because turbo supercharger gave superior power and firepower guaranteed target destruction with single burst. For long-range missions, I preferred P-51 because fuel efficiency made deep penetration feasible. Asking which is better is like asking whether hammer is better than screwdriver. Depends on job. German Luftwaffe pilots' post-war testimonies confirmed both were formidable. According to compilation of interviews, P-47 was devastating when it attacked from altitude. 8 guns destroyed aircraft with single burst, making even brief exposure fatal. P-51 was dangerous because its range meant nowhere was safe. It could escort bombers anywhere, meaning we faced fighters throughout missions. We feared both for different reasons. P-47 could destroy you instantly. P-51 could find you anywhere. P-47's combat record and design philosophy influenced post-war fighter development, while aircraft continued operational service, demonstrating unconventional design's lasting impact. Air Force Historical Research Agency compilation dated 1948 documented achievements.
According to compilation, total production, 15,686 aircraft, most produced American fighter. Combat losses, 3,752 destroyed, representing 24% of production. Aerial victories, 4,950 confirmed, equal to P-51's total. Ground attack achievements, approximately 9,000 locomotives destroyed, 86,000 rail cars destroyed, 68,000 vehicles destroyed, 6,000 armored vehicles destroyed. P-47 was most successful American ground attack aircraft, while being equally successful air-to-air fighter, demonstrating versatility original design hadn't anticipated. International service documented universal recognition of capabilities. According to records, P-47 served with United States Army Air Forces as primary operator, Royal Air Force, with approximately 800 aircraft primarily in Burma, Soviet Air Force through Lend-Lease, with approximately 200 aircraft.
Free French Air Force during 1944-1945 liberation, Brazilian Air Force in Italy 1944-1945, Mexican Air Force in Pacific. This made P-47 only American fighter serving with all major Allied air forces, demonstrating universal recognition that capabilities made it valuable despite unconventional characteristics. Derivative designs incorporated lessons influencing next-generation fighters. According to Republic aviation documents, F-84 Thunderjet entering service 1947 retained P-47's design philosophy, emphasizing rugged construction, heavy armament, ground attack capability. F-84 carried 6 50 caliber guns maintaining multi-gun pattern. F-105 Thunderchief entering service 1958 continued philosophy with heavy ordnance capacity and ground attack optimization. F-105's Vietnam service, where it delivered more ordnance than any other American aircraft, validated P-47's legacy that specialized ground attack aircraft with robust construction fill essential role. Pilot loyalty exceeded that for any other American fighter, with veterans maintaining passionate advocacy decades after war. According to Veterans Organization records, P-47 veterans formed active associations defending P-47's reputation against claims P-51 was superior. This loyalty reflected emotional bonds from aircraft, bringing them home despite damage that would destroy lighter aircraft. Veterans consistently emphasized feeling of security from armor and engine protection, confidence 8 guns would destroy targets, gratitude that toughness saved lives. P-51 pilots also formed associations, but emotional attachment appeared less intense, suggesting P-47's life-saving ruggedness created stronger pilot-aircraft relationship. Museum preservation ensured future generations could observe actual aircraft. According to records compiled 2020, approximately 30 P-47s remain flyable worldwide, with additional 40+ in museums. Flyable examples regularly perform at air shows, allowing modern audiences to witness impressive size and distinctive radial engine sound, providing connection to wartime experience. These preserved aircraft serve educational function, demonstrating P-47 was real functional aircraft rather than myth. Cold War assessment acknowledged P-47's essential role. According to assessment, P-47 ground attack operations destroyed German transportation infrastructure, making Wehrmacht movement increasingly difficult. 1944-1945. Destruction of 9,000 locomotives and 86,000 rail cars meant German forces relied on slower road transport. This delayed German reinforcements to Normandy, prevented rapid repositioning during Allied breakout, made Ardennes offensive logistically unsustainable. While strategic bombing received more attention, Tactical air power's transportation destruction was equally important, demonstrating greatest contributions sometimes come from unglamorous interdiction rather than dramatic dogfights. P-47's development and combat service revealed fundamental truths about relationship between design specifications and combat effectiveness, about firepower's role in air combat, about tactical innovation compensating for apparent weaknesses, and about ruggedness's value for sustained operations. First truth: designs that violate specifications can exceed conforming designs when innovation compensates for specification non-compliance, creating superior overall capability. P-47 was 20% overweight, violating weight specification, but achieved superior combat effectiveness through firepower and ruggedness that lighter aircraft couldn't match. Army Air Force's almost cancelled program due to specification violations, but acceptance of unconventional design produced war's most produced American fighter, demonstrating that rigid specification compliance can prevent development of innovative solutions that achieve mission goals through alternative means. Lesson is that specifications should guide design rather than constrain it. When alternative approach achieves superior mission effectiveness despite specification violations, specifications should be modified rather than superior design being rejected. Second truth: overwhelming firepower achieves rapid target destruction, minimizing exposure time and reducing combat risk more effectively than prolonged engagements using lighter armament. P-47's 8 guns destroyed targets in average 2.3 seconds versus P-51's 3.8 seconds with lighter 6-gun armament. This faster destruction reduced pilot exposure to return fire and reduced time spent in vulnerable attack position. Additionally, first burst kill probability of 40% versus P-51's 25% meant P-47 pilots had better chance of destroying target before target could maneuver defensively. Trade-off was weight penalty, but combat results validated that excessive firepower is preferable to insufficient firepower when attacking defended targets. This lesson influenced post-war fighter design, with jets universally adopting heavy armament following P-47 example. Third truth: tactical innovation exploiting unconventional characteristics can transform apparent weaknesses into advantages when tactics are developed specifically for aircraft's unique capabilities. P-47's weight made low-altitude maneuvering poor, but enabled high-speed dives that lighter fighters couldn't match. Pilots who attempted to dogfight were killed. Pilots who used boom and zoom tactics exploiting P-47's dive speed and firepower survived and achieved victories. This demonstrated that tactics must reflect aircraft characteristics rather than pilots attempting to use tactics that aircraft can't support. Tactical innovation, developing new operational methods for unconventional aircraft, matters more than attempting to use conventional tactics with aircraft unsuited for them. Fourth truth: ruggedness enabling mission completion despite combat damage provides operational advantage exceeding performance advantages of lighter construction, because aircraft returning damaged remain available for subsequent missions, while aircraft lost to damage that lighter construction couldn't survive are permanent losses. P-47 pilots routinely returned with damage that would have destroyed lighter aircraft: cylinders shot off engines, control surfaces shredded, structural damage. This survivability meant more pilots survived to gain experience, making them more effective in subsequent combats. It also meant aircraft availability rates remained higher because damaged aircraft were repaired and returned to service rather than being lost. Trade-off was weight penalty reducing performance, but operational analysis showed that availability and survivability advantages exceeded performance penalties, making ruggedness appropriate design priority. Fifth truth: Public recognition doesn't necessarily correlate with combat effectiveness. Aircraft receiving more publicity isn't automatically superior to aircraft receiving less recognition when objective metrics show comparable or superior performance. P-51 Mustang received more wartime and post-war publicity than P-47 due to bomber escort roles' visibility and aircraft's aesthetic appeal, creating perception that P-51 was superior American fighter. But statistical analysis shows equal production numbers, approximately 15,600 each, equal aerial victories, approximately 4,950 each. P-47 achieved lower loss rate, 0.7% versus 1.2% per sortie. P-47 destroyed vastly more ground targets, 86,000 plus rail cars, versus P-51's ground attack being secondary mission. This demonstrates that public perception influenced by publicity doesn't reflect objective combat effectiveness when metrics are compared systematically. Zemke's journey from skeptical pilot questioning P-47's viability to advocate defending its combat record demonstrated that direct combat experience, rather than theoretical analysis, determines aircraft's true capabilities. What began as concern that heavy unconventional fighter couldn't compete against nimble German fighters evolved through combat experience into understanding that boom and zoom tactics using firepower and altitude advantages were superior to dogfighting tactics that P-47 couldn't support. His testimony that P-47 was superior to P-51 at high altitude came from pilot who flew both in combat, making his assessment credible despite contradicting popular perception. The 8 50 caliber machine guns, initially criticized as excessive weight penalty, proved to be P-47's defining advantage through war. Concentrated firepower destroyed targets with single burst rather than requiring prolonged engagement. Redundancy meant jamming of several guns didn't eliminate killing capacity. Convergence pattern created destructive cone that was nearly impossible to evade once pilot achieved firing position. German pilots who initially laughed at P-47's ungainly appearance learned to fear and avoid Thunderbolts after experiencing devastating effects of 8-gun fire. By war's end, with 15,786 P-47s produced and 4,950 aerial victories achieved, plus thousands of ground targets destroyed, the transformation from questionable design that nearly was cancelled to war's most produced American fighter was complete. The mathematics proving that overwhelming firepower plus rugged construction plus tactical innovation equaled combat effectiveness had been written through thousands of combat missions, demonstrating that unconventional designs can exceed conventional designs when innovation compensates for apparent weaknesses. The German pilot's transformation from mocking P-47 to avoiding it demonstrated combat's ability to overturn preconceptions. What seemed like vulnerable target, large heavy fighter that couldn't dogfight, proved to be lethal adversary when piloted, using tactics exploiting its advantages. The laughter stopped after 8 synchronized 50 caliber machine guns demonstrated that 4,800 rounds per minute of concentrated fire could disintegrate fighters before pilots recognized danger. That lesson, don't judge combat aircraft by appearance or by comparison to different role aircraft, but rather by effectiveness at assigned mission, remains relevant for military aviation 8 decades after P-47 first entered combat, proving that heavy-armed unconventional fighter could dominate skies when employed using appropriate tactics, exploiting its unique capabilities.